In Argentina, the electoral ban begins so that citizens can think about who they are going to elect as president of the country next Sunday. In Panama, President Laurentino Cortizo informed the nation that his executive has already received a first payment for the mining contract. In Palestine, Gaza faces the threat of starvation and disease after aid deliveries were halted by a lack of fuel and communications blackout, humanitarian agencies have warned. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Rosabal from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Argentina, the electoral ban begins so that citizens can think about who they are going to elect as president of the country next Sunday. The authorities announced that the campaigns and advertisement of the presidential candidates of Union for Homeland, Sergio Massa, and For Liberty advisor Javier Milei have ended. During this period, the candidates will not be allowed to make public appearances, proselytize, public service, or pre-election polls. The sale of alcoholic beverage is also prohibited from November 20. Candidates who do not comply with the electoral code will be subject to sanctions such as imprisonment for 2 months to 2 years and will lose the right to receive contributions, subsidies, and annual public financing. The political and institutional crisis affecting Guatemala has escalated in the last hours. A series of raids and rallies had been followed by the announcement of the prosecutor's office, which would pave the way to a possible arrest of the elected presidential binomial. Prosecutor Angel Saul Sanchez announced to request the immunity's withdrawal of the president-elect Bernardo Arevalo, Vice President Karina Herrera, and several parliamentarians of the C movement. They are accused of having seized the University of San Carlos on social media. They are appointed as a leader of the violent actions. Several students and professors were detained by order of the prosecutor's office. The elected official responded to the serious accusations.
Yes, there is no longer any doubt that they are forging an authoritarian regression in Guatemala. They have announced absolutely illegal measures to intimidate the democratically elected vice president and president. Measures that also target sitting legislators and that show the desperation and ambition of this small group.
The president-elect also made an urgent appeal to the international community in light of the grave events of the past few hours.
They have decided to take this path, and today we warn the international community committed to freedom not to turn a blind eye to this authoritarian process. Democracy in Guatemala is endangered, but it will not let these actions prevent the new spring from beginning on January 14th.
Meanwhile, the U.S. government announced that it will sanction 11 Guatemalan officials it accuses of undermining the democracy. They point out that the measure has been taken in view of the latest actions the public prosecutor's office undertook against the elected presidential binomial formed by Bernardo Arevalo and Karina Herrera. Without mentioning who the 11 sanctioned individuals are, the State Department qualified a foreign government for carrying out continuous and blatant efforts to undermine the peaceful transition of power. By referring directly to the Guatemalan prosecutor's office, they assure that they are exercising various measures and refer to an assault on democracy and the rule of law. In Panama, President Laurentino Cortizo informed the nation that the executive have already received a first payment for the mining contract. The organization reacted to his announcement. The head of state promised that his office would abide by the decision of the highest court of justice on the constitutionality of the mining contract. However, the executive announced it already received from the Canadian company $564,840,543 that will be placed in a restricted account of the National Bank of Panama. The payment corresponds to the period that goes from December 2021 to October 2023, according to the contract established by Law 406 last month, which sparkled the social outcry rejecting the mining exploitation. The union social organization expressed their rejection to the presidential announcement and promised to stay in the streets.
And we most deeply regret these speeches by Mr. Cortizo here, who disrespected the Constitution and the law, was you and your cabinet. It was the Assembly of Deputies that approved a law against the will of the sovereign. It was the Supreme Court of Justice, which took 20 years to give a ruling, but after it gave it, 2017 until today, never enforced the ruling. The questioning of the powers of the state is no whim of the people. It is because you don't comply with the Constitution and the law.
Selman, the Secretary General of the National Union of Construction and Similar Industries, also responded to the warnings issued by the executive branch and the other Panamanian government agencies regarding the mobilizations.
The threat of judicialization of such a protest, we are also going to defend ourselves from it. Here what we have demanded is respect for national sovereignty, self-determination and the dignity solely by you in your government for preferring the dollars from the mine to the country.
On Thursday, photo reporter Ismael Villagomez was murdered in northeastern Mexico. This has been the fifth record of a journalist killed in 2023. Villagomez worked at El Heraldo de Juarez, and the Secretary of Public Security of Chihuahua, Jorge Armendariz, revealed the reported corpse was found in his car in the early morning. The journalist had a part-time job as a cab driver. Therefore, it's not clear his murder is connected to his journalistic activities. Police inquiries unfolded he received a bullet in his nut. The Committee to Protect Journalists made a call to Mexican authorities to thoroughly investigate the murder. Clashes between gangs in the city's LA neighborhoods. Fuel distribution trucks are not being supplied in Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti. Gang conflicts broke out on Monday over the control of Belacou in the north of that city. The murder of one of the gang's leaders unleashed terror in the area, forcing hundreds of residents to leave the area. The exodus and gang violence are interference with the loading of fuel. The Bordeaux terminal, which stores 70% of the country's fuel, is located in the conflict zone and has been unable to supply distribution trucks since Tuesday, which means a new fuel crisis in addition to all those that plague the country. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English. We'll find news in different formats, new dates, and more. Our study is coming up, stay with us. Gaza faces the threat of starvation and disease after aid deliveries were halted by the lack of fuel and communications blackout. Humanitarian agencies have warned. Aid deliveries into the enclave have been suspended again as Israel continues to restrict fuel supplies. The United Nations World Food Programme, WFP, said on Friday that civilians face the immediate possibility of starvation. Furthermore, Palestinian telecommunications company Joel and Palel said on Thursday that the networks went out of service after they ran out of fuel. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization said it was very worried about the spread of disease in Gaza, citing that more than 70,000 reported cases of acute respiratory infections and at least 44,000 cases of diarrhea. After a month and a half of Israeli siege, airstrikes continue to cause devastation and chaos to the Palestinian people. Hospitals, schools, and refugee camps have been targeted by the Israeli army. Our correspondent Noha Razin reports from the Gaza Strip with more details.
It is now day 44 of the Israeli aggression on Gaza, and while the connection and networks are still down, Israel continues to pound the Gaza Strip, northern Gaza, central Gaza, and also southern Gaza with airstrikes. One of the latest Israeli airstrikes was on Al Falah school. This is a school sheltering thousands of Palestinians. According to the eyewitnesses there, more than 140 people were killed and there is hundreds of injuries. However, they cannot call the ambulances, they cannot even take the bodies of those killed or injured and drive them to the hospital because, of course, most of Gaza's hospitals are besieged and surrounded by Israeli tanks and Israeli troops. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, the number of Palestinians killed in the past 5 weeks is more than 11,500, and with this continuous 12,000.
In Gaza, Israel's war against the health center seems unstoppable. While holding almost 5,000 hostages in the largest hospital in Gaza, the TeleSUR now begins a new siege in the IBN Sina hospital in Jenin. This is the second time that the Saudi forces attacked this health center. The argument remains the same as the ones they have used in the past attacks to other health centers. They claim to be looking for Hamas tunnels and command posts. The result has also been the same. The IDF have still not been able to fabricate solid evidence that certifies the use of these facilities by the Hamas as a command post or hiding place for hostages. The General Director of the Ministry of Health in Jenin confirmed that the assault of the genocidal troops claimed the life of 2 Palestinian citizens. Jordan confirmed on Thursday that it will not close the energy and water exchange agreement with Israel due to the Zionist operation against the Gaza Strip. Ayman al-Safadi, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Jordan, reported that an agreement to exchange solar energy for desalinated water will now be signed. The agreement should be carried out in the month of October, but al-Safadi pointed out that no minister of Jordan can sit next to an Israeli minister to sign an agreement while they are killing civil population in Gaza. The Minister of Foreign Affairs went further and assured that they will not hesitate to definitely cancel the Israeli-Jordan agreement and do everything that is not in their hands to help the Gazati brothers. On Friday, the Israeli Institute of Security Studies reported that since the beginning of the siege against the Gaza Strip, only 5% of worldwide demonstrations support the country. The study details that 95% of the world marches held since October 7th have been in favor of Palestine. The demonstrations have developed all over the planet, and it's worth to note that the countries like Yemen organized 486 mobilizations to reject the actions of the Zionist regime. The report also shows that the United States stands out as second in the world ranking of pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Global demonstrations call for a ceasefire, respect for hospitals, schools, the right of women, children, civilian and general, and humanitarian workers and journalists. The World Food Programme, WFP, has released footage showing empty shelves in the shops and food being distributed to families sheltering without the grounds of United Nations schools in Gaza, a food shortages hold in the region. With only 2% of necessary food supplies entering Gaza since the beginning of the most recent Israeli-Hamas conflict, food scarcity is becoming a concerning issue. According to the US WFP, only 25% of shops contracted by WFP remain open, and the rest have run out of essential food items. People are having to find makeshift ways to cook and make food with limited ingredients available. The US WFP warns of the immediate possibility of starvation in Gaza, and the food supply has broken down under Israel's seal and 2 liters coming from Egypt.
People are going hungry. In Gaza, people are surviving on just 1 meal a day, if they are lucky. Fuel shortages and loss of connectivity are crippling our operation in Gaza. The lack of fuel has forced the last WFP contracted bakery to shut down and the last mill to stop grinding wheat flour. Even bread, the cornerstone of every Palestinian diet, has now become a rarity.
The UN Security Council approved a resolution aimed at establishing temporary ceasefires and sending a humanitarian corridor throughout the Gaza Strip, a decision that the Zionist occupation entity, in a blatant violation of international law, announced that it will not comply with and that it will continue its war against the Palestinian enclave. Our correspondent Hisham Wanous with the story.
The draft, prepared by Malta, received 12 votes in favor, none against, and 3 abstentions from Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. A document that Palestinian permanent representative to the United Nations criticized as it focuses on the immediate release of all Israeli hostages and the urgent and expanded creation of humanitarian process and corridors without calling for a permanent ceasefire, condemning the brutal Israeli bombardment, or urging the immediate release of thousands of Palestinian prisoners in jails in the occupied territories.
This resolution shows that the so-called world community does not exist, and neither does the United Nations organizations, and there is not even the human rights, because this decision does not condemn the Israeli massacres against our brothers in Gaza, made us lose faith in the whole world, in the light after the slaughter that slips the blood of our fellow countrymen, knowing that no one in the world could act and take strong decision to stop the shedding of Palestinian blood in occupied Palestine.
In rejection of this resolution, the occupation troops continue their indiscriminate bombardment of Gaza, even assaulting for the second time in less than 24 hours the Al-Shifa Health Complex, where in addition to destroying several sections and medical equipment, they killed 30 patients, including 3 premature babies, and detained 200 people. A blatant violation of international law and a war crime, whose perpetrators, the Palestinians and their allies in the resistance bloc, demand must be tried and punished by the International Criminal Court.
The Zionist occupying entity is an aggressive and usurping body, and it is imperative that all law-abiding people, both in Syria and throughout the Arab world, pursue this entity before the relevant courts, in particular the International Criminal Court, to prosecute and penalize it for immoral and inhuman violation of all international laws, norms and resolutions with the massacres it commits in occupied Palestine, particularly in Gaza.
Meanwhile, the so-called world community remains incapable of stopping the Israeli war of extermination against Gaza, a resounding failure of humanity in Palestine, denounced the Palestinians, who, in order to thwart Zionist plans to displace them from their lands by force, in addition to sticking to resistance, urged the world to press for the United Nations Security Council resolutions not to remain only on paper.
Hisham Wanous, TeleSUR, Oriente Medio.
And we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, where you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, sub-stories, special broadcasts, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's more recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. The leader of the Socialist Workers' Party, Pedro Sanchez, promised to become president of the government on Friday at the Zarzuela Palace in front of the King of Spain, Felipe VI. After being re-elected by the Congress of Deputies with an absolute majority during the investiture session with 117 votes in favor, he took his sworn oath of office before the monarch in accordance with Spanish law. The ceremony, held in the audience of all in front of a copy of the Constitution, was attended by the President of the Senate, Pedro Reyan, the President of the Congress, Francina Armengol, and the Minister of Justice, Pilar Lop. Now the Socialist President must announce the member of its new cabinet of government. In Belgium, an international tribunal that for today is in Brussels analyzed the U.S. blockade and its Giva ruled on Friday that this policy violates international law and universal norm for peaceful coexistence. After hearing the arguments of the prosecutor's office and the testimony of the witnesses on the human and economic damage of the blockade, the tribunal recalled that the United States has been applying this unilateral system of coercive measures for more than 60 years, affecting the living condition of the entire people, its development and the performance of the various sectors of society. The decision of the judges also reflects the extraterritorial scope of the blockade, a component contrary to international law, and its identification with the inclusion of the island on the list of alleged sponsors of terrorism. The opinion read by the judges, headed by the German jurist Norman Pitch, also pointed out that the blockade violates the international covenants and economic, social, and cultural rights of 1966. The hearing on the Iranian statement of imprisoned opposition leader Osman Sanka to the electoral roll for the 2024 presidential elections began this Friday in Senegal at the Dakar Supreme Court. The 49-year-old politician was arrested on July 28 and faces charges of planning an insurrection, undermining state security, and criminal association with a terrorist organization. Sanka secured the third position in the country's 2019 presidential election and enjoys significant popularity. Malik Diare, press officer of Sanka's opposition party, stated that Sanka remains one of the favorites for 2024 elections, arbitrarily detaining the right of the rights for his political opponents. Sanka supporters claim that the criminal charges against him since 2021 are part of an orchestrated campaign to hinder his political aspiration ahead of the presidential elections in February. The Russian government announced on Friday the free shipment of the first free grain cargo to Africa since the end of the Black Sea Agreement. Russian Agriculture Minister Dmitry Patrushev confirmed the shipment of 200,000 tons of grain months after the withdrawal from the Black Sea grain deal. Patrushev added that the shipment is bound for 6 African countries, and deliveries to Burkina Faso and Somalia have already left Russian ports, and he assured that additional shipment will be soon made to Eritrea, Zimbabwe, Mali, and the Central African Republic. President Putin had promised to deliver free grain during the summit with African leaders in July. A strong earthquake of magnitude 6.7 struck the southern Philippines on Friday, the U.S. Geological Survey reported. The impact of the earthquake caused the evacuation of buildings and the collapse of part of the roof of a shopping mall in the city of General Santos, less than 100 kilometers from the epicenter of the quake. The ground motion occurred of the province of Sarangani on the main southern island in Mindanao, at a depth of 78 kilometers, and was felt over a wide area of the mountainous island. Earthquakes are a recurring phenomenon in the Philippines, located along the Pacific, ring of fire, and an arc of intense seismic and volcanic activity that extend from Japan through Southeast Asia to the Pacific Basin. And we have come to the end of this news brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share a newscast and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSURenglish.net, and join us on social networks, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alene Brosabal. Thank you for watching.